What's up, everybody? Happy Wednesday to you. It is indeed Wednesday, my dudes. Hope you all are having a good week so far. I've been having fun. Yesterday on the supporters only stream, we did a little Gundam versus Zeta Gundam and tinkering with some Gundam Mark IIs. So thank you guys for tuning in for that, hanging out with me. Today, here on Midnight Hatter, the weekly variety show where we talk Gundam and apparently we just make video games live
Yeah.
before you. Um, we're gonna get a little further into this because last week we were talking about just some general concepts, and now we're gonna start talking mechanics. But before I get too far into it, joining me as always is Adam Blue of Gundam Explained. How you doing, buddy?
Doing good. Yeah, excited about this. It's just amazing how it went from an idea that I would just kind of throw around to like you actually putting things together. And
Yeah,
and that's another thing. I play, Gundam games so much that in gaming in general, it's like I know what I would want and I know what would be fun for everyone. And that actually, so SD G Generation Genesis, Anyway, the UC one,
yes,
I've been playing a lot of that this week.
that's such a great game.
It is, and it's funny because I realize it's more of a story driven game because some of the missions are like nothing and it
Yeah,
takes a second, but I like then it's almost like a way to revisit the story, which um
yeah,
that's one main thing about Gundam games that hopefully it's like the idea coming out of this is being able to have a story that's translated or distributed around the world instead of how we get some Gundam games where we have to rely on others to do that. So,
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I mean that's kind of like a theme about this whole channel that I've got here is it's about, kind of seizing your own gaming destiny.
yeah,
Whether it's tabletop video games, that sort of thing.
yeah,
It's
good
really
point.
about like if there's not something out there that you really enjoy, then just make it.
Yeah,
And for this, it's like we're not setting out to, would it be cool if Bandai Namco sent us a C&D and then like at the bottom of that said, by the way, can we have your source code? That would be fine. But
yeah, yeah.
but no, we're not anticipating, releasing this as like something fun that we can play with. But I see that we've got the usual crowd in the chat. Robert Westfall, good to have you back, buddy.
Yeah,
Shirt Lad, Dan Vince, Nike, good to see you guys. Thank you for
yeah.
tuning in, and yeah, thank you for you know, well, commenting on the elephant in the room. It was Randy Pausch who said, "If there's an elephant in the room, introduce him." So, nice haircut.
Yeah, no, thanks. Yeah, it was just one of those things. Actually, it was just my wife saw an older pic of me. She's like, "Oh, I missed your hair like this," and I was like, "Oh, I'll cut my hair," and
Done.
she was like, "Sure," and I was like, "Oh, okay." And then after I got it cut, she's like, "Oh no." No, no, it's a lot of it. It was cool to do. I always wanted to do that. Just it's a lot of work.
It is. Yeah, it's a lot to maintain. My wife is getting on me about it too, so this is probably going to go here soon.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so I'm excited to share with you what we've got some updates here as far as the game, which I guess tentative title Gundam Infinite Conflict I think is.
And I came up with something else. Infinite fronts.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very so like that. When I was planning on doing like a large scale sort of West Marches style Gundam campaign, I had planned on calling it the Contested Fronts,
Mm,
because it was going to be set in two different I guess fronts of the 1 Year War, one being in North America and one being in like the colonies of Side Two. Uh,
that's cool.
but Infinite Fronts, I like that.
Yeah. It kind of goes the idea of fronts and infinite open world. That kind of idea.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, hopefully this would allow players to sort of make their own story. So let me hop into the screen share view here, and we will go ahead and start showing off a little bit of the changes that I've made, and I'm gonna sort of talk you through one of these core gameplay loop mechanics that we have implemented. We're just going to expand it a little bit. Hopefully you guys are enjoying this larger scaled UI. I remember last week when I was trying to show off what we were doing here. It's like itty bitty little text. So now hopefully you guys can read all of the code that I've got here. You guys can read all of the different parts that we're looking at.
Yeah, it's clear, so good call on that.
Yeah. Now to me it looks like, I'm like right up on the computer, but these are the sacrifices that we make for presentation's sake. So the first obvious change you might notice in our scene view is that our player mobile suit, the GM that we had set up before, is gone. Now the reason that is the case is because we have set it up so that now when we load our game and we are in gameplay, the player mobile suit is loaded at runtime.
Am I seeing particle effects?
Those are some particle effects. So
Wow.
yeah, that's the next phase, which I think I'm actually going to turn those off for the purposes of preserving frame rate. I think that
Oh, okay.
I'm thinking
Look
that
cool, though. That really look cool.
yeah,
It gave
yeah,
it
some
texture, you know?
just a little bit of extra. Now, obviously, we've got some problems with our GM here. He looks like he's seen better days.
Yeah.
So, what we're going to do is hop into our player prefab, if you will, our player object, and let's go into mobile suits, MS parts, and we're going to take
Anything
this
to
GM
get him
head.
ahead in life.
That's,
I think I'm just pulling from Austin Powers now.
yeah, exactly. So now that we've dropped our GM head into our head slot here on the right hand side of our player script, you will see that we are headed.
Wow. Yeah, headed in the right direction.
Yeah, we're headed in the right direction for sure. So basically, what we have done is I've created a few different classes of scriptable object. Now, a scriptable object is sort of like it's like a container of information. So every scriptable object, you know, is basically just, you can put in different information to represent different things. So, for instance, here we have the GM head scriptable object. Now, every scriptable object is going to have an equip slot drop down. Obviously, this one is the head, but we have a lot of other slots that we can plug it into. And then it's got our part prefab, which in this case is this GM head that is just a 3D model of the GM head. And then what happens is when we have our player object at runtime, it will grab that scriptable object and load whatever data is in that whatever's in that object. Now we can expand on that and make it even more powerful. So like for instance, this is the script of the scriptable object where we've got our list of different slots that we can occupy. Maybe we even want to start adding things like right leg and left leg, which again, this is one of the things that we talked about last week was, do we want to, how customized do you want the mobile suits to be? Because we don't want them to be like a build fighters game,
Right.
but one of the core gameplay loops that we've talked about is as you're exploring the world, as you're exploring, the battlefield, if you come across certain parts, you want to be able to, add them.
Like exchange or fit on. And I think the best way to go about it is whatever we've seen in canon done, and then maybe do research on like maybe something that hasn't been in canon, but due to whatever in universe development projects have gone on, we know that there's compatibility. And that would be neat because it could be that you have your mobile suit and you want to do something and you find out, oh, I can't use this part. I need to get this other frame. It's like, oh, a Mark
That's a
II would allow me to do this. So,
Yeah, and we talked about like having like the UMP where, like
oh yeah,
yeah, the Universal Maintenance Program where Xeon started standardizing their parts so that they could be swapped in and out
yeah.
a little more easily. So, going into the script part of the equipable parts, we can add in additional things such as Um, you know, maybe we have a float, which is just a so integers are whole numbers, floats are percent style numbers. So if we've got a float that is, say, defense bonus, or maybe, yeah, let's do. I always forget whether to do camel case or, um,
Yeah, you got me.
but we're just going to add a couple more floats here. Maybe say attack bonus, and
Oh,
these
yeah.
may or may not be useful for each individual part, but
Right.
the idea is,
Basically, you're adding the bonuses that would be added on based on the part. And I guess based
exactly,
on the part with the frame being like the base stat. Like a GM body would be a base stat, a Zaku 2 would have a base stat, and then
exactly. So similarly, if we hop into our mobile suit scriptable object, we can add in floats such as max HP. Um, oh, probably need to add that float part. In fact, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and copy it so that I stop having to type it. um, so we'll say base attack, base defense, things like that. And so then when we hop back into the Unity Inspector, these are all things that we can control directly in here. And so there's no coding involved because the code is kind of built into it. So like say for our head, we want it to have a 2 defense bonus and maybe give it like, 30 HP that will be added to the mobile suit frame. With 0 attack because it's a head, not a you know,
yeah,
not a weapon or something like that. Now, obviously, these numbers don't represent anything yet. This is just showing off like what these scriptable objects are capable of containing. So similarly, if we've got our this is the RGM 79 GM um, scriptable object that is we've got our core mobile suit, which is just that GM model that I was showing off, the headless, shoulderless GM model. Obviously, the more slots we want to add to it, the more we would take off of the existing frame.
okay.
So if we come in here, we'd set our max HP to like 100, base attack 30, base defense 25, something like that. Doesn't matter, we can always tinker with the numbers later on. Um, but I suppose it would be cool if we kind of walk through creating some of these parts to fill in because the only thing I've done
Yeah,
so far is the head.
okay.
Um, So what we would do is in the MS parts folder, this is something I'm particularly proud of, is you come up here to create and we have a sub menu option here. Shoot, it's like off screen.
No, I saw it.
So we have a sub menu
Yeah.
option here that is
Oh, I see.
Gundam and you can create a mobile suit or an equipable part.
Wow.
So we're going to call this GM uh maybe left pauldron, left shoulder. Yeah, we'll say left shoulder. Or you know what? This might be
Mhm.
a little more fun. Rather than that, let's try this again. We're going to create an equipable part and we're going to call it Zaku 2 left shoulder. Because that's what this is all about, right? Is,
Oh,
you
yeah,
know,
adding the Zaku 2 left shoulder on, or left pauldron, yeah.
exactly. So, let's grab we've got our blender file here where we've got the GM. Oh, bless you.
Excuse me.
We're just going to delete everything in this. Delete, and then we are going to import our Daku 2 so that we can pull out that left shoulder. So it would
Yeah.
be, so that's the spiked one.
Yes.
It
Yes.
took me a second to remember which left and right. All right, so it's gonna be the largest one is the body here.
Oh, there
There
we
we
go.
go.
Nice.
So we've got our Zaku 2 here, we're just going to uh, hop into edit mode and separate by loose parts. And then we're going to delete everything in here except for our shoulder. Like I missed a bunch here.
Yeah, even the piping
Yeah.
is. Huh.
And eventually we're going to have to create the rigged up version of a Zaku 2 anyway,
Ah, okay.
so this is just going to be for illustrative purposes only.
Yeah.
Um, Now the question is, do we take the entire shoulder, including the sort of box around the shoulder, or do we just take the shoulder mounted shield?
My thought, and I could be wrong, is the whole shoulder with the shield. I'm thinking like if they were having to do that, they would have to replace that connector piece.
Exactly.
So
So
yeah.
then, yeah, we're going to take the whole thing. Let's join these objects back up. And then the tricky part is actually going to be, I should have kept the armature. In
Oh,
fact,
because you might have to rig it
well,
or whatever.
I'm going to copy it here, and then we're going to go back to when I had the armature, because what we are going to do is come back. Oh man, went too far. So let's reopen it. Don't save. All right. So the reason I want to have the armature handy is because as far as positioning the 3D object, we need a point of reference, and we are going to use the armature bone as that point of reference. Now, I'll sort of explain. Um, I'll explain where that comes into play here shortly. Oh,
And again, with this, is some of this plugins that you've got, and or is some of it your own custom?
fortunately, this is all stock.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, stock. What you call it, Blender creation. Let's see, where is that part? I know I pasted it in. There it is. Okay. So the reason why we need it, or why we need the armature, I should say, is because we are going to copy the location of that specific shoulder bone that we are going to be mapping it to. Um, and I just realized I was supposed to do the spiked shoulder and not the shoulder shield, but
Oh, yeah.
whatever.
But yeah, whatever.
So we are going to just copy this little bit here. In fact, I'm going to write it down somewhere because I am worried I'm going to forget.
No, good idea.
So we've got -28 in the X slot. Come on. Second. -28 in the X slot. 3.63 in the Y, and 149 in Z. Now, the reason why we need all of those is because when we delete our armature, we are going to grab that shoulder joint and we are going to put in basically the offset of those values. So on the X, we are going to put it at 28. On the Y, we are going to put it at -3.63. And on the Z, we're going to put it at -149. Now, that is obviously, positionally looks awkward, but the reason we're doing it this way is so that it will be placed in the right spot um, when we actually load it in. So Zaku 2 right shoulder. I promise the payoff is going to be worth it.
Oh, I believe you.
So we'll hop back in here, and in our mobile suits folder, MS parts, we've got our right shoulder now. I'm going to just go ahead and correct the name, Zaku 2 right shoulder. Again, we're going to go in and change the equip slot of that. We're going to take that object and drop it in. So that'll be the 3D model that goes in. And then we're going to have to make some changes to the script because currently we don't have a place to map the right shoulder. So under the player control script here, we've got, all of our list of parts. And down here at the bottom, we have our find target bone, which is, it's just a function that looks at the slot that is stored in the MS part and then sets the target bone
Hmm.
of that to the correct bone in the armature. So I'm just going to copy this and paste it in again here, and we're going to call this one right shoulder. Now obviously we don't want it to find the head, so we are going to find what the actual path would be. The best way to do that is going to be pull up our GM here, look into our prefab, and under the armature, waist, chest, it will be bicep right. And that's going to be where we want to map it to. So let's do bicep.r in our script. Save that up. And now, fingers crossed,
Yeah.
we will see our, let me make sure it's in there, right shoulder, everything is correct. This is all set up, right shoulder, right shoulder. So now when we go to play, it did not spawn our right shoulder.
Unless it's somewhere else in the map.
That is entirely possible, and I think that that is probably what happened. So fortunately, we can
Okay.
go into our armature here and find where that would have been spawned. It should be a child of the bicep right, and it looks like it is not. So it did not spawn correctly,
Oh, okay.
unless, yeah, it did not spawn at all. So let's see where we went wrong. GM head.blend, that's correct. Ah, I think we need to set the rig here. We're going to do copy from another avatar. We're going to copy the GM avatar and apply and see if that makes the difference, because technically it is supposed to be, well, nope, this one's generic too, so there's no reason it should. Right shoulder, right shoulder. Maybe I misnamed something over here. Oh, I know what I did wrong. I forgot to add in the start function. You see, I've got this little bit that says if head equals null, we find target bone head and then equip. That's the problem. So let me come back in here. I'm going to undo what I just did here because obviously this is not a humanoid bone. We're just going to set it to generic and apply. And then we'll go back into our code. We're going to copy this bit. So this is on the start function. So when the game loads, we're going to check and see if our right shoulder is populated or not. So that's why it didn't spawn anything, because I didn't tell it to spawn anything.
Oh, okay. Well, hopefully that's just it. It's not one of those things where you do that knowing you have to, and then it still didn't work. It's like, okay, there's something else.
Yeah. I think that this will be the fix though. We'll see. Let's see what we've got here.
Oh,
Okay.
oh, nice.
So it has spawned. It's just in
Yeah,
slightly the wrong spot. But it is mapped to the bone, obviously, because
yeah, 'cause
it's
it's moving along. That's pretty interesting.
okay. So we're making some progress. The
Yeah.
trickiest part, I think, is just finding some of these things. In fact, you know what? The best way to, I think, address this issue would be to copy the transforms directly from the gameplay loop. So, for instance, let's uh, I've paused the game. So currently it's running, but it's paused so that we can work on it while it's going. So we're going to select this and check out its position and everything. I think that the problem might be that its transform is not where it's supposed to be. Um, so we've set it to 0, 0, 0. We want to have it maybe rotated 90. No, not on that axis. So basically, the idea is we're just trying to position it where we want it, and then we're going to be able to copy these values and paste them onto the prefab of the object.
Mm.
So, looks like we're pretty close. Let's see. Pull it out. I think that's
Yeah, it
looks
looks cool from here, but
yeah. I like that it almost perfectly obscures the like the exposed shoulder of the GM.
yeah,
Um
that is good.
so I think I'm just gonna raise it up a little more, maybe pull it out so that it's not clipping into the shoulder. All right, so 141 or 148.1 and -39.2 and a 90-degree rotation there. You know what? Tell you what, we're just gonna copy um these component values and then hop into this prefab if we can. Um, oh, I think I see what our problem might be. We just need to create a prefab out of it and paste these component values. And then we will replace that one with our prefabbed version. We'll delete that huge one in the mix. Let's see how it looks now. Slightly better. Uh Now it's got the right angle but still misplaced.
Yeah, interesting.
So, let's open up this prefab. Maybe we'll just set everything to 0 and just rely on the placement of the prefab. There we go.
Oh, wow.
So that's the effect we were looking for. Obviously, the placement, I think I screwed it up a little bit, but it's a lot better than it was before.
And I haven't bothered trying to customize a GM where I only replace the shoulder, so I don't know. The scale might even be a little funky anyway.
That's also true. It's tough to get right on the first go, I think is what I'm learning. So I think if
Oh,
we
yeah, that looks good.
align it there, We're going to do the same thing. We're just going to copy the component while we're in gameplay mode, go back into our prefab, paste in those component values, and try again. Whoa. Well, that is not what we wanted. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure why it, oh, you know what? It's because I made those edits to not the, yeah. We actually need to just go into our prefab and we're just going to position it sort of manually here. So I think we established that it was slightly too high and slightly too far out. It's interesting that it loads in upside down like this.
Yeah, like its default
Yeah, it'd
thing.
be nice if it, you know, if
Oh
it
yeah,
played nice.
Lucas is asking what program. It's Blender for like the 3D modeling, and then Unity for the game dev part
Yeah,
of it. Yeah.
there we go.
Wow.
So that is what we would be looking at.
Yeah, because the idea would be, especially at the beginning of this demo, it's like you have a damaged GM, you can pick up a Zaku shield, shoulder shield to put on. Um, and it's kind of neat. Yeah, not as far as build fighters, but just enough to make it feel like you can tell your own story,
Yeah,
with your mobile suit.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So, I guess the sort of next step would be taking that sort of, obviously we've got the core gameplay, like okay, we can equip parts onto our frame, like the player frame. So the next thing would be how do you then, we'd have to develop like a UI, an inventory type menu where we've got a list of scriptable objects that we have to choose from. Which as it turns out, is also fairly simple to set up once you have these things sort of in place. So, for instance, if we wanted to create a public list and we are going to make it a list of MS parts, um, and we'll call it, parts inventory or something like that. And I think that that's all we need to do. It might throw an error. We'll find out.
Yeah.
My C sharp is a little rusty. It's been a while. Hey, cheers, Lucas. Have a good rest of your day. And yes, thank you, Adam, um
Yeah.
for
See you, Lucas.
yeah, keeping on top of the chat for me. So yeah, there we go. We have our parts inventory, which
Oh.
is a variable size list, and what we can do is once you have um some slots in there, you can start dropping in parts, and then that would be from a UI perspective, we would just target that list and say like, okay, for each item in this list, here are the options, and we can um, equip them into their given slots.
Yeah, I didn't consider that there would be a degree of work necessary within the editor to create a space to make the game, pretty much. Yeah, like
Yeah, yeah, it's
some I didn't consider. Yeah.
but and that's one of the advantages of using like a game engine like Unity or Unreal or Godot, what have you, is just having this inspector view where you know this almost is like it's like a sample of what your game UI would be. Obviously, it's not as attractive as like having animated menus and stuff like that. But
Sure. Sure.
all this data has to have a place to live, and
Yeah.
this is where it would be.
No, that's cool.
So yeah, I think that we can probably talk about maybe if we wanted to have this be part of the core gameplay loop, um, let's just try. Let's try creating a command that we can use at runtime in order to load one of these parts. So what I'm going to
Oh,
do is
that's
I'm
a
actually
good
going to
idea.
delete the right shoulder out of the right shoulder slot. And in our script, we're going to add in a void update, which is update just updates every frame. So it um just checks for any changes that might occur. So we're going to say if input dot what do it would be get button down, I think. Let me double check. Like we can pull up our basic behavior here. Get access. Uh, that's just all of our basic behaviors. Let's try our move behavior. I think that that's going to have our input here. All right, yeah. We're just going to say if input get button down, and we'll put in something like fire 2, which I think is going to be a double click by default is what that normally means. You can actually customize those as well, which is something that we'll probably get into later anyway, because obviously you're going to want to have string references that make sense to you, like, you know, uh, the default sort of like unity mapping to gamepad controllers is like northwest east south, which doesn't mean a whole lot to you besides like, okay, that means like triangle whatever system you're on.
Oh, yeah.
But you can give them specific names like jump, crouch, whatever the case may be.
Ah, okay.
So what we will do is basically we just need to take this chunk of um, of that start function and paste it in here. Except what we're going to do is instead of checking if right shoulder is not null, we're going to see if it is null. Then we want to get the right shoulder component out of our inventory and apply it. So, parts inventory. Say that we can just go with index 0, which would just select the first one. Um,
Do you have it where another button cycles the inventory?
I don't yet. Well, I mean, we just created the inventory, so I don't. We don't have any way of controlling it or interacting with it yet,
Ah,
anyway. But suppose I can check that out. Unity get first item from list. I've got ChatGPT open here to help us.
oh, nice.
I'm just
I
kidding.
feel like that's like the new thing now to always have a chat GPT near you to like ask it something real quick.
Doesn't it feel that way? Honestly, it certainly seems like it. Okay, perfect. So here's
Yeah,
what
and I don't know if we talked about this, but using chat GPT to help create mid-journey prompts by feeding chat GPT what all the parameters are and then asking it, "Hey, can you give me a," and I tested it and it was all right. I was able to get an Amuro. I'll have to share it later, like a
yeah,
live action Amuro.
yeah, I'd like to see that. That'd
Yeah.
be interesting. I mean, that's kind of wild. Like the idea, how many degrees of separation can we get from from human contact?
Yeah.
Um, so what we'll do is we're just going to say right shoulder and set it equal to our parts inventory index is 0. Now obviously this is only going to work for us because we only have one item in the list, but
Ah,
once you have multiple items in the list, you'd want to be able to categorize them and say like, okay, how many of them are shoulders, how many of them can be equipped, the things that we've been talking about, like, because obviously if you want to introduce elements like compatibility, like, oh,
oh
you
yeah,
might have a shoulder in your inventory that is incompatible with the current mobile suit that you have equipped. So that's a whole other
yeah.
that's getting into far more complicated territory. So let's see how this works. I'm going to keep this open on the right hand side because obviously we see that we've got the right shoulders empty, and we do have that parts inventory right shoulder. Oh, so maybe Fire 2 is not the switch that we wanted it to be, because I didn't see any errors get thrown. However, we didn't spawn our shoulder.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, so this character controller doesn't actually have a Fire 2 in it, so we were going to have to add one. Be nice if I could actually read it though. it's Let's put it over here so that I can uh so let's say, oh, here we go, Fire 2. Oh, it just doesn't have a keyboard um input. It only has a joystick input. So let's set it to H.
Okay.
See how that works. There we go.
Wow.
So that was a little quick. Let me I will go back so that we can actually show what's happening here. Um so now that we've mapped the Fire 2 command to a specific key on our keyboard, we can just come in here and tap H, and at runtime we spawn our shoulder. Um
Impressive.
right, it's such a minor thing, but then, like, it's the foundation of all of the types of things that you can do in video games are, that's how complicated it gets.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy to think how a lot of time the time it goes into the tools, whereas, the actual game itself, when you play it, you're not spending it that much time. It's kinda crazy how that works, you know?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I mean, I think it's pretty cool that we kind of have these that we have these tools available to us and for free.
Yeah, no, that is pretty amazing because even what you did just now, if someone wanted to have their own 3D space, like, oh, just think of how that Gundam, mobile breaker is now gonna be shut down, and so
Yeah.
people were, like, building like, someone could come in here, make their own little Gunpla part builder.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't have to do with being a video game in the end of the day. It could really just be a thing to just fiddle around and, um wow, yeah, shows all the different. I mean, just think of next when we get a hangar in here or some sort of
Oh
warehouse that
yeah.
we could walk into and then create the screen for when you dock, and then it's like choose your parts or whatever.
Yeah, so that's going to be like the next sort of fun part would be creating the UI that you would
Oh, yeah.
interact with in order to sort of access this data and swap out these types of parts, because obviously, like, it's easy enough to do those types of things at runtime once you have commands in place for them. But I mean, you know when it comes to like sorting the list and like all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff, there's definitely a lot more work to be done with it, but I'm pretty happy with you know where we've gotten with it, and utilizing scriptable objects as part of the workflow, right? rather
And
than having to create like, individual, like, because otherwise we would have to create a script for every single mobile suit that's like, this mobile suit has this HP, this mobile suit
oh, I
has
see what you're
this,
saying.
like, so it's like,
Okay.
by having a scriptable object, we can just create these things on the fly and say like, all right, I want to create another one that has all the same information as the last one.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So it's like using the tool in order to create your own tool for developing the game, which I think that's great because it just makes me think of, especially old school game dev where it was just like they're just trying to figure out what they can do and they were just making things up. And then slowly it formed where then devs would release the source code or whatever or map editor. And yeah, I remember like even the StarCraft map editor, I think it was StarCraft, where it it was just these tiles. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, do these developers just make Legos pretty much, and then they hand the Legos to other people, which is cool if you think about it. And but
Yeah,
having like something like Unity, I think it's why Unity is so popular because it's almost like here's a whole bunch of pre-built Lego sets, but you can combine them and make your own type of
that
Legos.
is a remarkably apt analogy.
So good.
Yeah, I mean that's basically kind of what you're doing here is it's like, taking the Lego factory and making your own Lego sets for
Yeah.
for how you want to build things out. Um but yeah, that's what I've got for today is just how to use scriptable objects and how to kind of, obviously it takes some work, like, getting the placement and the mounting of these things right? It's because like, um because the 3D objects, they don't have an they don't have a context of like, oh, I'm supposed to fit on like
Right.
this.
It's
So
like you
you
have to
kind of have to
individually
tell
do it
it.
for yeah, especially with this idea of mobile suits having custom parts for some things or not. That's definitely gonna be a manual process for each thing. But, also it's pretty cool because like, you did this in about an hour. You built a way to add on parts and then make the little sorting list, and then the last one, um I forgot what we did on that one, and it was you were just showing off, I think, the basically the model that you had in the world.
Yeah, yeah, just
Yeah.
showing off the model in the world, and I've actually tweaked up the animations. I hope you have noticed that the animations are slightly uh
Oh, yeah, they didn't stand out as being very overly
kind of jerky and
yeah, yeah.
yeah. So we've tweaked the animations a little bit, added some new locomotion that it was part of a free animation pack. And again, this is
Oh, cool.
again one of those beautiful things about Unity is the fact that you have like an animation controller that can be mapped to humanoid characters just on the fly. So like, we take our what we want, grab our, oh, where's the GM? If we take our GM and plop him in here, this is the sort of animation.
Oh, can
um
you share that again?
oh yeah, oh, I'm such an idiot.
No.
I appreciate you. So, yeah, we've got our humanoid animation mapper here,
Mhm.
and we created a, it's got a blend tree so that you can kind of control certain aspects of it. And so, like, you can preview those animations directly on your own 3D model.
That
Um,
is cool.
maybe switch it up to running. Um, and that cuts the development time, you know, to fraction of what it would be if you had to individually animate every humanoid
Yeah.
character. So you can have like a series of animations that you create that are all mapped to the same skeleton and then just apply that skeleton to all of your different models.
Wow, very impressive. That
I wish I could take
it
credit for it. Nah.
no, but it's just impressive because there's still a degree of learning. With
Yeah.
even though it's almost easier to make a game, there's still a lot of work to
Oh,
learn it.
absolutely. I would
Yeah.
not. I definitely encourage people to tinker with it, and it makes me very happy to hear that that Lucas is going to go download Unity and start tinkering with this stuff because
Yeah.
because I think everyone would have fun with it once they get over that initial learning curve hump. and again, like I said, it's all about if you're not seeing the video games out in the world that you want, make them.
Yeah.
Be the video game designer that you want to see in the world, right?
Yeah. No, that's a good point about it's just about learning it because it's almost like when someone switches from like Android to iOS for the first time. At first it's like, "Oh my god, I got to learn all this." But then you do, especially with phones because people have to use phones in this society. So,
Yeah,
like people have the capacity to learn new programs and applications, but sometimes it's the necessity of the urgency of needing to do it. Phones, you just kind of have to learn to use them. But
right.
yeah,
Well, it's
software stuff, it's like you got to be in the right spot where you got to be motivated.
yeah, I think so. I mean, it it's a matter of I guess perspective, right? Too many people kind of see the mountain for the summit and
Oh
not
yeah,
and
that
not the series of hills that it really is.
yeah,
Obviously there's a lot that I still have to learn in order to make these things work. I still look things up, frequently. I'm like,
yeah,
"Oh, how do I make a list of mobile suit parts? How do I access particular indexes on that?" Um, so yeah, I mean, there's definitely you're always learning, always growing. And that's kind of the
yeah,
fun part about doing this is it's like, even though we're trying to create something fun, it's like learning how to create something fun using these tools is almost fun in itself.
right, yeah, yeah, definitely. It's like when you're drawing when you were younger and you're just drawing on a paper or whatever, and then eventually seeing what it turns into.
Yeah. So hopefully you guys dig this this level of progress. I promise we're not going to do this every week, but I thought that it was a fun follow-up to last week's because now we're actually starting to get into the sort of the meat about like last week we were just kind of showing off like, hey, look, we can actually load Gundam models into a 3D space and control them. Now we're talking about like, hey, we have the ability to like take them down, break them into their individual components, and then load them at runtime, which is
Yeah, start looking into mechanics that would be part of the gameplay. So yeah, that's it's pretty cool to actually see that. That's the furthest I think I've ever seen where I've had an idea for something and like tried to work on getting it to something. Like really seeing it like that's impressive.
yeah. Well, hopefully, in our next update, I'll we'll take a break from some of these kind of less interesting, well, I don't want to say less interesting, less active, less action oriented mechanics. Maybe we'll drop in some enemy Zaku's or something
Oh
and
yeah, that's right.
start talking about things like hitboxes and dealing damage.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, yeah, like I said, that's all I've got for today. Adam, am I missing anything? I feel like I'm forgetting something.
No, I think it was just another smooth operation.
Yeah.
So
Well, if you haven't, definitely check out the links in the description. Adam dropped a video today,
that's
reviewing
right.
the
The G3 Target exclusive of the Gundam
yes,
universe. Yeah.
yes, the Gundam Universe Target exclusive, which I've heard is kind of a rare find because at least I haven't been able to find it, and Zionic
Yeah.
Shadow hasn't been able to find it.
Yeah, I think it just came out. Yeah, I think that's why it seems like it's rare because only some stores have gotten it, and then it will probably start showing up more.
Yeah,
And usually these Gundam Universe figures are easy to get when they get released. So
yeah,
I guess it's just a matter of like even in that video near the end, I was showing the Sazabi that I got for 11.99 because no one was buying it. Because of, I mean, a $40 Sazabi, that's not bad, but Target, no one's gonna be like going to Target to look for that or something like that. You
exactly.
know what I mean? It's like a so.
Yeah, and I mean for me, where I'm at, like the only place that I've even found Gundam Universe figures is Walgreens.
Oh yeah,
It's like
which my Walgreens don't even carry them anymore. But they did at one point. So
rip.
yeah,
But
interesting.
uh, but yeah, so definitely go check that video out. I will have another episode of Dissecting Gundam out on Friday. It's going to be
Nice.
Dissecting Zeta Gundam episode 2. I'm really excited about
Sweet.
this one. There's a lot of fun stuff that we're going to talk about, and yeah, I'm going to hopefully have that available for Patreon supporters later today. So if you're not
Oh,
supporting, consider joining. Links down in the description for that as well.
but really later today.
Yeah, later
So
today is the plan.
wow, awesome. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, so we keep the Gundam content flowing here.
Yeah, I know, it's great.
It's speaking of which, as always, tune into Gundam Explained show tomorrow,
Oh, yeah,
11 a.m.
yeah.
Central, 12 p.m. Yeah, 12 p.m. That always messes me up too. It's like the 11 a.m., 12 p.m. because it's noon,
I know, like,
noon Eastern.
what in the world is with the sun going around the Earth?
I know. We're just gonna start doing like 20. We're gonna go military time. We're doing
Yeah, there you go.
yeah,
There you go.
1300 Eastern, right? No. Oh my gosh. Well, anyway, like I said, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Adam, thank you so much for
Oh,
keeping me
of
honest
course.
with the chat. And
Yep.
yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this stuff. Till then, I guess we'll catch you tomorrow.
Yep, see y'all.
Cheers.